Her father's trial. Defeat my savage daughter, and she's yours. The planet Krithar was a place where survival was everything. Its skies burned red at dawn, and the winds carried the scent of metal and ash from the ancient wars that had scarred its surface. Mountains jutted out like jagged teeth, and deep valleys cut through the land like scars. It was here that warriors were tested, not just for skill, but for courage and heart. Eli had traveled for months across star systems, following rumors of a challenge that had drawn the attention of the galaxy's best fighters. He had heard whispers of Leora, a warrior who was called the Savage Daughter, a woman whose skill and ferocity were unmatched, and whose father, Commander Jerk, ruled Krithar with an iron hand. Eli did not seek power or riches. He wanted to test himself, to prove that humanity's spirit could stand against any force, alien or otherwise. He landed his small transport on the rocky surface of Krithar and stepped out, his boots crunching against the uneven ground. The air was sharp, biting even through his suit, and he could see the remnants of ancient battles etched into the landscape. In the distance, a fortress-like city stood tall, its towers gleaming under the harsh sun. This was the domain of Commander Jerk, a man whose reputation rivaled that of kings. Eli's path was clear. He would enter the city, request an audience, and accept whatever trial was set before him. As he approached the city gates, he was stopped by soldiers clad in black armor, their visors reflecting the harsh sunlight. One of them stepped forward. "State your name and purpose," the soldier demanded. Eli removed his helmet and met the soldier's gaze steadily. "My name is Eli. I'm here to face Leora, the Savage Daughter, and her father's trial." The soldier studied him for a moment, then signaled to others. The gates opened slowly with a deep groan, and Eli entered. The city was unlike anything he had imagined. Streets were lined with high walls and watchtowers, and every corner seemed prepared for battle. Civilians moved cautiously, their eyes alert but not fearful. They respected strength here, but survival required more than brute force. Eli noticed statues of warriors that lined the city's central plaza, each depicting a human or alien fighter frozen in a moment of triumph. Krithar's history was one of endless conflict, but also of resilience. Eli was led through winding corridors and staircases until he reached a large chamber. At its center, a man stood tall, his presence commanding even without movement. This was Commander Jerk. His armor was ornate, decorated with symbols that told stories of victories long past. His eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto Eli the moment he entered. Beside him, a woman moved with precision and grace. Her hair fell in a dark wave across her shoulders, and her stance was one of confidence and power. This was Leora. Her eyes met Eli's briefly, a mixture of challenge and curiosity sparkling in them. "Eli," Jerk's voice boomed across the chamber, deep and resonant. "You have come to face my daughter. Many have tried and many have failed. The trial is not simply about combat. It is about strength, intelligence, and honor. If you wish to proceed, you must understand that failure is not just defeat. It can cost your life." Eli bowed slightly, his expression calm. "I understand, Commander. I am ready to face the trial, however you define it." Jerk nodded slowly, then turned his attention to Leora. "You will test him," he said. Leora's lips curled into a faint smile, not one of warmth, but of anticipation. She moved forward, her steps measured, and stopped a few meters away from Eli. The tension in the room was palpable. Even the soldiers lining the walls were silent, waiting to see how the first encounter would unfold. The chamber shifted as Jerk signaled. A force field emerged, forming a large arena in the center of the room. The walls of the arena were high, and the floor was designed to test agility and skill, with uneven terrain, obstacles, and hidden traps. Eli and Leora stood at opposite ends, circling each other, measuring distance and strength. The first moments were a test of reflexes. Leora lunged with speed that almost seemed unnatural, her strikes precise and deadly. Eli dodged and blocked, feeling the force of her blows, each one teaching him about her style and approach. He was not here to match her in sheer power, but to understand her rhythm, to find a way to adapt. He realized quickly that brute force alone would not win the day. Every move had to be deliberate, every decision calculated. The battle raged on, fast and furious. Sparks flew as weapons clashed, and the ground shook with the weight of their movements. Eli could feel his strength being tested to the limit, yet he found moments of clarity between strikes. He began to anticipate Leora's movements, countering with clever maneuvers that demonstrated strategy over raw aggression. Leora, for her part, recognized his skill. Her attacks became sharper, more precise, but also more measured. She was testing him as much as he was testing her. After what felt like hours, Eli found an opening. He feinted left, drawing Leora's attention, then spun to strike with a move that was both daring and calculated. Leora barely avoided the blow, stepping back with a quick twist that revealed a flash of respect in her eyes. Eli lowered his weapon slightly, signaling that he understood the trial was not about victory at all costs. Jerk's voice echoed across the arena. "Enough," he commanded. The force field dissipated and the two combatants stepped back. Eli was breathing heavily, his body bruised and battered, but his mind was clear. Leora's expression was unreadable, but the tension between them had shifted. No longer was this a simple test of strength. It was a measure of character, of resilience, and of the capacity to act with intelligence under pressure. "You have passed the first test," Jerk said finally. "Not by defeating my daughter, but by showing qualities I value in a warrior. Strength is important, but so is honor, courage, and the ability to think under fire. You have shown that you possess these traits. The trial is not over, but you have earned my attention, and hers." Leora approached Eli, her gaze direct and unflinching. "You surprised me," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Most who come here are reckless, seeking only to prove themselves. You are different. I will watch you closely. Do not mistake my respect for weakness." Eli nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He did not seek admiration or affection. He sought to prove that humanity, even in a distant star system, could rise to meet challenges with courage, wit, and honor. The chamber emptied, leaving Eli and Leora alone for a brief moment. The air was heavy with the unspoken acknowledgement of mutual respect and challenge. Eli felt a flicker of curiosity about the next stage of the trial. He knew that Crithar's challenges would not end here. This was only the beginning. The real test would come not from combat alone, but from the decisions he would make, the alliances he would form, and the dangers he would face alongside or against Leora. As Eli left the arena, his mind raced with possibilities. He could see the landscape outside the city, vast and dangerous, a world that demanded courage and intelligence in equal measure. He knew that the next steps of the trial would take him deep into Crithar's wilderness, into situations that would test not just his fighting skills, but his judgment and spirit. He also knew that Leora was no ordinary warrior. She was fierce, cunning, and intelligent, capable of seeing through deception and understanding the motives of others. If he hoped to succeed in the trials to come, he would need to earn not only her respect but also her trust. And he understood instinctively that earning trust was far more difficult than winning a fight. As night fell over Crithar, Eli gazed up at the red sky. The stars above were unfamiliar, distant, but full of possibility. He had come to this world seeking a challenge, and he had found more than he anticipated. The first step of the trial had been completed, but the journey ahead promised danger, growth, and the chance to prove that the human spirit, clever and resilient, could stand against any force, alien or otherwise. He felt the weight of the trial pressing on him, but he also felt something rare and valuable, the sense of being tested fairly, not just for skill, but for what made him human. And in that realization, Eli understood the true value of the trial. Crithar would see what humanity was capable of, not through conquest, but through courage, intelligence, and heart. The first part of his journey had ended, but the adventure was only beginning. And in the distance, Leora watched, her expression unreadable but her mind already calculating the possibilities. Eli knew one thing for certain: Crithar had tested him, and he had survived. And now the real trial was about to begin. The morning sun rose over Crithar, casting long shadows across the rocky plains outside the city. Eli had slept little, his mind filled with thoughts of Leora, the trial, and the challenges that awaited him. He knew that what lay ahead would not be simple. Commander Jerk's tests were never just about strength. They measured intelligence, judgment, courage, and heart. And Leora, the daughter he had already faced once in the arena, was more than a mere fighter. She was a protector, a strategist, and a force of nature. He gathered his belongings and prepared for the next stage. A small transport ship awaited him at the edge of the city, its hull sleek and sturdy, capable of navigating Crithar's treacherous terrain. Leora appeared at the landing platform, her movements calm but purposeful. Eli noticed the way she scanned the landscape as if every rock and ridge held a threat. She did not smile, but there was a flicker of interest in her eyes as she regarded him. "You are coming with me," she said simply. Her voice was firm, carrying the authority of someone used to giving orders. Eli nodded. "I expected no less," he replied. He could sense that this phase of the trial would be different from the arena. It would not be a contest of one-on-one combat. It would test endurance, ingenuity, and the ability to survive under pressure. The transport lifted off smoothly, rising above the jagged cliffs and winding valleys. Eli looked out the viewport, taking in the harsh beauty of Crithar. The land stretched endlessly, dotted with dark forests, sharp mountain peaks, and vast deserts of red and black sand. Leora guided the ship with precision, navigating hidden paths that few outsiders would know. "The world outside the city is dangerous," she explained. "Rival mercenaries, alien predators, and natural hazards make survival difficult. Commander Jerk wants to see how you handle it." Eli leaned back slightly, studying her. He did not see a savage woman here, only someone who understood the stakes and respected the value of preparation. "And you?" he asked. "Do you enjoy watching them fail?" Leora's eyes met his briefly. "I do not enjoy failure," she said, "but I respect those who try. Most fail because they are arrogant or careless. You are different." The ship landed in a dense forest, where tall, blackened trees loomed over them like silent guardians. Shadows moved unnaturally in the dim light, and Eli could hear distant, guttural growls. "Stay alert," Leora warned. "Predators here are unlike anything you have faced. They hunt with intelligence, not just instinct." Eli checked his weapons and nodded. He was ready. They moved through the forest cautiously, Leora leading the way, her senses attuned to every sound, every shift in the air. Eli followed closely, learning quickly that the terrain itself was part of the trial. Fallen logs, hidden pits, and sudden drops tested balance and observation. Eli's first encounter with a predator was sudden. A creature with 6 limbs and glowing eyes lunged from the shadows, its claws sharp and its teeth exposed. Eli reacted instinctively, raising his weapon and firing. The shot grazed the creature, slowing it but not stopping it. Leora moved with fluid precision, striking the creature with a blade that seemed to extend like liquid steel. The predator fell, but the encounter was a lesson. "Do not rely solely on force," Leora said. "Think, adapt, and use your environment. A strong mind is as important as a strong arm." Eli absorbed her words, realizing that every step forward was a test, every decision observed. They traveled for hours through forests, across streams, and up steep ridges. Along the way, Eli began to notice patterns in Leora's behavior. She tested him constantly, giving subtle challenges that required judgment rather than brute strength. At one point, she led him to a cliff overlooking a deep chasm. "We need to cross," she said. Below, the only way was a narrow ledge with loose rocks and jagged outcrops. Eli looked at her doubtfully. "You must decide the best path," Leora said. "I will follow, but I will judge how you lead." Eli assessed the ledge carefully. One wrong step could mean a fatal fall. He began moving slowly, testing each foothold, scanning for loose stones. Leora followed silently, observing every choice. When they reached the other side safely, she nodded in approval. "You think before you act," she said. "That is a rare trait among warriors. Most rush forward and pay the price." As night fell, they made camp in a small clearing. The forest was alive with sounds, some beautiful, some threatening. Eli lit a small fire, careful not to draw attention. Leora sat opposite him, her gaze distant as she listened to the forest. "Your first trial in the arena was impressive," she said finally. "You did not seek to overpower me, only to understand and adapt. That is why you survived. Most would have failed." Eli smiled faintly. "I believe understanding is stronger than strength," he replied. "Brute force alone can never win a battle." Leora studied him for a long moment, then allowed a small smile. "Perhaps you are right, but there is more to learn. Commander Jerk will want to see how you handle leadership and moral choices. Strength of character is tested in moments like these." Eli nodded, realizing that every encounter, every decision was a part of the trial. The predators, the terrain, the dangers, they were all designed to measure more than combat skill. The following day, they faced their first true challenge as a team. A group of mercenaries, armed and ruthless, had set up an ambush. Leora and Eli approached cautiously, and Eli could see the tension in her posture. "We can fight them head-on," she said. But that is not the best solution. Watch and learn. Leora observed the mercenaries' positions, identifying weaknesses and patterns. She whispered instructions to Eli, guiding him through maneuvers that relied on stealth, timing, and clever use of the environment. Eli moved as she directed, setting traps, creating diversions, and striking precisely when needed. Together, they dismantled the ambush without unnecessary risk. Afterward, Eli realized the significance of the exercise. It was not just about defeating enemies. It was about protecting the innocent, making decisions under pressure, and maintaining honor while under threat. He was learning not just from the environment, but from Leora herself. She was a warrior, yes, but also a teacher, strategist, and protector of her people. As they continued their journey, Eli and Leora encountered alien creatures that tested their endurance. Some attacks were physical, others mental, requiring patience and clever thinking. Eli began to see patterns in Crithar's dangers, understanding that the planet itself was part of the trial. It demanded respect, awareness, and adaptation. Leora occasionally offered insights, but more often she let Eli find his own solutions. It was a silent teaching, one that emphasized observation, intelligence, and courage. One evening, as they rested near a crystal-clear stream, Eli reflected on the day's events. He had learned that victory was not always the goal. Sometimes survival and wisdom were greater achievements. Leora noticed his contemplative mood and spoke softly. "You are learning quickly," she said. "Few have survived even half of what we have faced. Your mind and courage are as sharp as your strength. Commander Jerk will take notice. Perhaps you are truly worthy of the trial." Eli felt a quiet pride, but did not allow it to cloud his judgment. He knew the trial was far from over, and that every step forward would bring greater danger and responsibility. He also began to sense a bond forming with Leora, built on respect and mutual understanding. They were not friends, not yet, but allies in the most challenging sense. Their survival depended on trust and cooperation. Days passed, and the challenges grew more complex. They navigated frozen mountains, crossed deserts of shifting red sand, and evaded swarms of alien predators that tested every skill Eli had. Each obstacle required intelligence, strategy, and teamwork. Leora observed every action, silently measuring his ability to adapt and lead. Eli realized that the trial was as much about understanding Leora and earning her respect as it was about conquering Crithar's dangers. Finally, after a grueling journey, they arrived at the edge of a massive canyon, its depth hidden by mist and shadows. Leora stopped and turned to him. "The final test begins here," she said. "You must decide how to proceed, not with weapons, but with judgment. One wrong choice could cost us dearly. Remember everything you have learned." Eli studied the canyon, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He knew this was more than a physical challenge. It was a test of his mind, courage, and character. He stepped forward carefully, considering every option, every risk. Leora followed silently, her eyes sharp, watching how he handled the situation. Eli realized that the trial was far from over, but he also understood the lesson Crithar was teaching him. Strength alone does not define a warrior. It is courage, intelligence, honor, and the ability to protect and inspire that truly mark a hero. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eli and Leora stood at the canyon's edge, ready to face whatever came next. The journey had tested them in every way, but it had also revealed something greater: the power of the human spirit, its resilience, and its capacity to rise above even the most formidable challenges. And in that understanding, Eli felt a quiet determination. He would face the next stage of the trial with courage, intelligence, and honor, knowing that the real test was only just beginning. Eli and Leora stood at the edge of the canyon, the mist curling up from the depths below like a living thing. The canyon was vast and foreboding, stretching as far as the eye could see, with jagged rocks protruding from the shadows and the faint sound of rushing water echoing from below. Eli felt a moment of doubt, but he quickly pushed it aside. He had faced challenges on Crithar before, and each had taught him the importance of observation, planning, and patience. He had learned that rushing forward without thought was a path to failure. Leora studied him, her gaze steady. "The canyon is more than an obstacle," she said. "It is a test. You must decide the safest and smartest way across. Every choice has consequences." Eli nodded. He could feel the weight of the trial pressing down on him, not as a burden, but as a challenge that demanded his full attention. He scanned the canyon, noting the series of natural ledges and rock formations that could serve as steps across the gap. Some looked stable, others crumbled at the slightest touch. He could see faint tracks in the dust, evidence that creatures or previous travelers had passed this way. Eli realized that he had to use both his intelligence and his instincts to determine the correct path. He chose a route that seemed risky but direct, testing each rock carefully with his weight before stepping fully onto it. Leora followed silently, her movements fluid and precise, watching him with quiet approval. As they progressed, a sudden rumble shook the canyon floor. Rocks loosened above, tumbling toward them. Eli reacted instinctively, pulling Leora aside and shielding her with his body. The boulders crashed past, missing them by inches, but the experience made him aware that every moment on Crithar carried danger. Leora's eyes were sharp, scanning the canyon for any other threats. "Quick thinking saved us," she said. "Most would have panicked. You are learning to think under pressure, and that is what Jerk values most." They continued across the canyon, their steps measured and deliberate. Each obstacle was a lesson in observation, timing, and courage. When they finally reached the far side, Eli felt a sense of accomplishment, but he knew the trial was far from over. Crithar's challenges were designed not just to test the body, but the mind and heart. As they descended into a dense forest below the canyon, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew thick and heavy, filled with the scent of strange vegetation and the hum of unseen creatures. Eli tightened his grip on his weapons, aware that predators could strike at any moment. Leora moved with ease, her senses attuned to the environment, her every step deliberate. She seemed almost one with the land, and Eli could see why she was called the Savage Daughter. She was not merely a fighter, she was a protector of Crithar, a guardian who understood the delicate balance between strength and survival. Hours passed as they navigated the forest. They encountered alien wildlife, some hostile, others merely curious. Eli had learned to observe and understand, to recognize patterns in the behavior of the creatures, and to respond appropriately. Leora guided him subtly, offering advice when necessary, but mostly allowing him to make his own decisions. This was part of the trial as well, to see if he could adapt and learn, not simply follow orders. At one point, they came across a river swollen with rainwater from the mountains above. The current was strong, and crossing it would be dangerous. Eli considered building a raft or finding a safer path, but Leora shook her head. "You must cross here," she said. "It is not the easiest route, but it is the correct test. The river is part of the trial. Your choices here will be observed." Eli took a deep breath and studied the river. He noticed rocks partially submerged, forming a natural stepping path, though slippery and treacherous. Carefully, he tested each step, moving slowly to maintain balance. Leora followed closely, her eyes scanning for any sudden changes in the water. A sudden surge threatened to sweep them away, but Eli's quick thinking and steady movements allowed both of them to cross safely. Leora nodded in approval. "You remain calm and adaptable under pressure. That is rare. Most fail before they even begin." Night fell, and they made camp near the riverbank. Eli had learned to rely on both his own instincts and Leora's guidance. They shared little conversation, yet a silent understanding had begun to grow between them. He could sense her respect, quiet but firm, and he understood that trust was being measured as carefully as skill. Crithar's trial was teaching him that survival, intelligence, courage, and honor were all interconnected. The following day, they faced a more complex challenge. A group of mercenaries had been spotted moving through the forest, likely tracking the same path. Eli realized that a direct confrontation would be dangerous. Leora observed the situation and suggested an ambush from a distance, using the terrain to their advantage. Eli followed her instructions, setting traps, creating diversions, and positioning themselves strategically. When the mercenaries arrived, they were caught off guard. The plan worked perfectly, and the intruders were subdued without unnecessary violence. Eli realized the significance of the exercise. The trial was not about defeating enemies through brute force. It was about intelligence, leadership, and moral judgment. He saw that Leora's respect for him had grown, not because he was stronger than most challengers, but because he thought, adapted, and acted with integrity. As they traveled deeper into the forest, the terrain grew more difficult. They encountered cliffs, narrow passes, and sudden drops. Each obstacle required careful planning and coordination. Eli found himself relying on both his own instincts and Leora's guidance, yet he was also learning to anticipate her thinking, to understand her approach to danger and strategy. This mutual understanding was crucial, as Crithar's challenges demanded more than physical skill. They required harmony between mind and action, between leader and ally. One evening, as they rested on a rocky ledge overlooking a valley, Eli reflected on the journey so far. He had faced creatures, mercenaries, and the unforgiving landscape, yet he had survived and learned from each encounter. He understood that the trial was as much about growth and understanding as it was about combat. Leora watched him quietly, sensing his contemplation. "You are learning quickly," she said. "Few have survived even half of what we have faced. Your courage and intelligence are impressive, and Jerk will take notice." Eli smiled faintly. "I have learned that Crithar is more than a test of strength," he said. "It is a test of judgment, patience, and adaptability. Every challenge has taught me something about myself." Leora nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of approval and curiosity. "Good," she said. "That is exactly what your trial must prove. Not that you can fight, but that you can survive, lead, and think. These are the qualities my father seeks in someone who would earn his trust, and mine." The next day brought their most dangerous challenge yet. A massive predator, larger and more intelligent than any creature they had faced, emerged from the forest. Its body was covered in thick, scaly armor, and its glowing eyes followed their every movement. Eli knew that brute force would not win this battle. He studied the creature, observing its behavior, its patterns, and its weaknesses. Leora moved beside him, her presence steadying him and reinforcing the lessons he had learned. Together, they coordinated their approach. Eli used his environment cleverly, luring the creature toward traps they had set earlier, while Leora struck with precise, calculated attacks. The predator roared, charging at them repeatedly, but they worked as one, adapting to its movements and anticipating its attacks. After a tense and exhausting struggle, they finally subdued the creature, demonstrating not only strength but intelligence, teamwork, and courage. Eli realized the importance of trust in these moments. He trusted Leora's guidance, and she trusted his decisions. That mutual respect and understanding were central to the trial. Crithar's challenges were designed not only to test physical ability, but also to reveal character and leadership. Eli had begun to understand that the human spirit, clever and adaptable, could rise above even the most formidable threats. As night fell over the forest, they made camp again. Eli reflected on the journey so far and on the bond that had begun to form between him and Leora. It was not friendship in the traditional sense, but it was a powerful connection built on respect, shared struggle, and mutual understanding. He knew that the trial was far from over, and that the challenges ahead would test them both in new and unexpected ways. Eli looked at Leora and saw not only a warrior but a teacher, strategist, and guardian. She was the embodiment of Crithar's values, a living example of what strength, intelligence, and courage could achieve. And he understood that the trial was preparing him not just to face her father's challenges, but to become someone worthy of respect, trust, and partnership. As they drifted to sleep under the canopy of the forest, Eli felt a quiet determination settle within him. Crithar had tested him in ways he had never imagined, yet he had survived and grown stronger. The canyon, the predators, the mercenaries, all had been lessons in courage, intelligence, and honor. And he knew that the true test, the one that would determine whether he was truly worthy, was still ahead. Leora watched him as he slept, her expression unreadable. She had seen many warriors come and go, most failing where they had believed themselves strong. Eli was different. He was clever, adaptable, and courageous, yet humble and willing to learn. That combination of qualities was rare, and she knew that Commander Jerk would see it as well. The next stage of the trial would take them even further into Crithar's wilderness, into situations that would test not just combat ability, but leadership, judgment, and the capacity to protect and inspire others. Eli was ready, though he did not know exactly what lay ahead. What he did know was that Crithar's challenges had already taught him the value of patience, observation, and collaboration. And he understood with quiet certainty that his greatest trial was not fighting the savage daughter. It was learning to meet her as an equal, as a partner in survival and strategy. And so, as the stars above Crithar glimmered faintly through the forest canopy, Eli prepared himself for the next chapter of the trial. He had survived the canyon, the predators, and the mercenaries. He had proven courage, intelligence, and resilience. The journey ahead would demand more, but he felt ready. Crithar was testing him, shaping him, and he would rise to meet whatever challenges came next. Eli and Leora had traveled far from the city into the wildest regions of Crithar. The forest gave way to rocky plains, and the plains to jagged mountains that pierced the sky like stone spires. The air was thin and cold, and the land itself seemed alive with challenges. Eli had learned much on this journey: observation, patience, strategy, but he knew that the ultimate test still awaited him. They reached a plateau overlooking a valley where smoke rose in thick plumes. Leora's eyes narrowed. "The raiders are here," she said. "They threaten Crithar's settlements. Commander Jerk has set this as your final trial. You must lead the defense, not just fight, but protect the innocent and outsmart those who would destroy everything." Eli felt a surge of determination. This was no longer a controlled trial in the arena or a journey across forests and cliffs. This was real. Lives were at stake, and Crithar's future rested on his choices. He understood that the trial now measured more than skill or courage. It measured leadership, judgment, and humanity. They moved quickly down the mountains, planning their approach. Leora guided him to positions where the terrain could be used as an advantage. Narrow passes, hidden ridges, and rocky outcroppings could funnel the raiders into traps or give defenders the high ground. Eli studied the formations carefully, noting potential ambush points and escape routes. Leora handed him a map, crude but detailed, showing the settlements most at risk. As they descended into the valley, scouts reported that the raiders numbered far more than anticipated. Eli realized that direct confrontation would be suicide. He needed to plan, to use intelligence, terrain, and timing to compensate for their smaller numbers. He and Leora began assigning roles. Civilians would be evacuated to safe areas, traps set along the main paths, and ambush points marked with precision. Eli's mind worked quickly, balancing strategy with caution. The first wave of raiders arrived at dusk. Their ships hovered low, casting shadows across the valley. The ground troops followed, armored and armed with unfamiliar weapons. Eli felt a brief moment of fear. It was natural, but he pushed it aside. Every decision now mattered. Every action could save or cost lives. Leora's presence was steadying, and he drew confidence from her experience and observation. Eli gave his first orders. Archers positioned along the cliffs would rain fire upon the raiders, while traps hidden along the narrow paths would slow their advance. Leora took charge of the vanguard, leading small groups to flank the enemy, striking quickly, then disappearing into the terrain. Eli coordinated from a central position, moving between observation points to maintain a clear view of the battlefield. The raiders struck with force, but Eli had anticipated their moves. They funneled into narrow passes, triggering traps and ambushes. Explosions and clashes echoed through the valley. Eli noticed how Leora moved, not just fighting but guiding, protecting, and inspiring those around her. She was a force, but also a leader. He realized that his success depended not only on strategy, but on learning from her example. As the battle intensified, Eli faced a critical decision. A group of raiders broke through a weak point near a civilian camp. He had to choose: pursue them aggressively, risking exposure to the main force, or send a smaller team to contain them, potentially leaving other areas vulnerable. He considered his options carefully, recalling the lessons Crithar had taught him. Strength without wisdom was dangerous. Acting without thought could cost lives. Eli sent a small, well-equipped team under Leora's guidance to protect the civilians, while he led a flanking maneuver to trap the raiders. The plan worked, but not without difficulty. The raiders adapted quickly, forcing Eli to improvise. He led his group through narrow passes, using terrain and misdirection to confuse the enemy. Leora struck with precision at critical moments. Her actions coordinated with his in a way that surprised even him. Together they turned the tide. Hours passed and the battle reached its peak. Smoke filled the valley, fire consumed parts of the plains, and the cries of combat echoed far and wide. Eli realized that his trial was no longer about him alone. Every choice he made affected others. Every decision carried weight. His courage, judgment, and ability to act under pressure were being tested more than ever. At one point, a raider commander, a large and heavily armored alien, advanced toward Leora with deadly intent. Eli saw the danger immediately. He could have stayed in his position, but he knew Leora's life was crucial to the battle's outcome. He charged, drawing the commander's attention and creating an opening for Leora. Together, they fought as one, combining intelligence, timing, and skill. The raider fell, and Eli felt a rush of relief. They had survived another deadly encounter. By midnight, the raiders began to retreat. They had underestimated the human fighters, the strategy, and the terrain. Crithar's settlements were safe, though the land bore scars of the conflict. Eli stood on a ridge overlooking the battlefield, exhausted but exhilarated. He realized that the trial had pushed him to limits he had never imagined. Strength, intelligence, courage, and leadership had all been tested, and he had risen to meet them. Leora approached silently, her expression calm but approving. "You have done well," she said. "You led, adapted, and protected. Most who attempt this trial fail because they cannot think beyond themselves. You have proven yourself capable." Eli looked at her, seeing not just a warrior but a guide and partner. He had earned respect through action, not words. As dawn broke over the valley, Commander Jerk arrived with reinforcements. He surveyed the battlefield with a critical eye, his gaze settling on Eli. Silence hung in the air as Jerk studied him. Finally, he spoke. "You have done what few could. You have not only faced danger but led others, protected the weak, and outsmarted a formidable enemy. Strength alone does not earn respect. Wisdom, courage, and honor do. You have shown all three." Eli bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Commander. I did what was necessary to protect the people and survive. I only followed the lessons Crithar taught me." Jerk nodded slowly. "Lessons, yes, and a demonstration of character. That is what I seek in anyone who would earn my trust and my daughter's respect." Leora has been watching, and I see that she is satisfied. Leora's eyes met Eli's, and he saw the faintest hint of acknowledgement, a recognition that he had passed not by force alone, but by courage, intelligence, and honor. The valley was quiet now, scarred but safe. Fires burned in the distance, signaling the retreat of the raiders, but the people were alive and grateful. Eli understood the significance of this moment. Crithar had tested him fully, and he had risen to meet the challenges. It was not just survival that mattered. It was the way he had led, protected, and acted with honor under pressure. As they prepared to return to the city, Eli felt a sense of calm satisfaction. The trial was nearly complete, yet he knew that recognition from Commander Jerk and Leora's respect would mark the final step. He had learned lessons that would stay with him long after Crithar, about courage, strategy, patience, and the strength of the human spirit. Leora walked beside him, her presence steady and quiet. "You have done well," she said again. "But the trial is not complete until my father formally acknowledges your actions. That will come soon. Until then, understand that your choices today have shown who you are, not just as a warrior, but as a human being." Eli nodded. He had come to Crithar seeking a challenge, a test of skill and spirit. What he had found was more than he imagined. He had learned about leadership, responsibility, trust, and the weight of making choices that affected more than himself. Crithar had proven the strength of humanity, not through weapons alone, but through courage, intelligence, and heart. As the sun rose higher in the sky, they began the journey back to the city. Crithar's landscape stretched endlessly before them, jagged, beautiful, and harsh. Eli understood that the trial had changed him. He was no longer just a warrior seeking glory. He was a leader, a strategist, and someone who had earned respect through action and integrity. Leora glanced at him, a faint smile forming. "The final acknowledgement is soon," she said, "but understand this, you have proven yourself. Not many earn the right to stand here today, and fewer still earn the trust of Crithar's people. You have done both." Eli felt a quiet pride, tempered by humility. He had faced the savage daughter and survived her tests. He had led and protected, made critical decisions under pressure, and proven his courage and intelligence. Crithar had challenged him fully, and he had risen to meet the trial. As they approached the city, the streets were quiet, the citizens watching from a distance, aware that something significant had occurred. Eli knew that Commander Jerk would now decide whether he had truly earned the final respect and recognition. He also knew that Leora's acknowledgement, quiet but genuine, was a reward in itself. Crithar had tested his strength, intelligence, courage, and heart, and he had passed. The final stage of the trial, the recognition from Jerk and the confirmation of Leora's respect, was imminent. Eli was ready to face it, not with arrogance, but with the knowledge that he had proven himself through action, judgment, and honor. Crithar had tested him fully, and he had survived. The human spirit, resilient and clever, had once again risen to meet a challenge that seemed impossible. The city of Crithar was quiet that morning, yet the air felt charged. News of the battle in the valley had spread quickly, and citizens lined the streets to watch what would come next. Commander Jerk had summoned Eli and Leora to the central plaza, a place where trials and proclamations had been held for generations. The plaza was vast, with stone terraces rising toward the sky and statues of Crithar's greatest warriors standing watch over the proceedings. The air was sharp and cold, but there was a sense of anticipation that warmed the hearts of those gathered. Eli followed Leora across the plaza, careful to match her pace. Her presence was steady, commanding, and somehow reassuring. He had faced predators, mercenaries, harsh terrain, and a large-scale battle, yet this final moment felt as tense as any previous challenge. He understood the weight of what was about to occur. Commander Jerk's judgment would not be based solely on what he had done in the battle. It would be based on everything he had demonstrated during the entire trial: courage, intelligence, leadership, and honor. The plaza fell silent as they approached the center. Commander Jerk stood on a raised platform, his armor gleaming in the morning sun. His eyes, sharp and assessing, settled on Eli. There was no warmth in his gaze, only scrutiny, yet Eli felt no fear. He had prepared for this moment for months, facing challenges designed to test every aspect of his character. He met Jerk's gaze steadily, standing tall and confident. "You have returned," Jerk began, his voice carrying across the plaza. "The valley has been secured, your leadership observed, and the lives of Crithar's citizens protected. You have faced challenges that would have destroyed lesser warriors, yet you endured. You have demonstrated courage, intelligence, and honor. But more than that, you have shown the capacity to think, to protect, and to inspire." Eli bowed slightly. "Thank you, Commander. I only did what was necessary to protect the people of Crithar. I have learned much from this trial and from Leora." Jerk's gaze shifted to Leora, who stood silently beside him. "And you," he said, "have judged him well. Few have earned the respect of Crithar's people and of myself, yet he has not only survived, he has led, adapted, and protected. That is rare. That is what I seek in anyone who would stand beside my daughter." A murmur ran through the crowd. Eli realized that this was the moment he had worked toward, the culmination of every challenge, every lesson, every choice. The trial had been grueling, yet it had forged something new within him: confidence tempered with humility, courage sharpened by intelligence, and strength guided by honor. Jerk stepped down from the platform and approached Eli. "Do you understand what you have accomplished?" he asked, his voice softer than it had been in battle or trial. Eli nodded. "Yes, Commander, I understand that strength alone is not enough. Judgment, courage, and honor define a warrior, and those are the qualities I have tried to show." Jerk studied him for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Then you have proven yourself," he said. Eli took the hand, feeling the weight of approval from a man who had tested warriors for decades. But more important than the commander's recognition was Leora's reaction. She stepped closer to Eli, her expression unreadable at first. Then slowly a smile touched her lips, a smile that was not of victory but of acknowledgement. "You have done what most cannot," she said quietly. "You have faced Crithar, survived its challenges, and earned respect not through brute strength but through courage, intelligence, and honor. I respect that. I trust that. You have proven yourself." Eli felt a warmth he had not anticipated. He had come seeking a challenge, a test of skill and spirit, yet he had found something more. Leora was not just a warrior or a daughter of a great commander. She was a partner, an equal in mind, spirit, and heart. Their bond had grown through mutual respect, shared danger, and trust earned in moments where lives hung in the balance. The citizens of Crithar watched silently, then erupted into cheers. They understood that Eli was not only a victor of the trial, but someone who had demonstrated the qualities their planet needed in a leader and protector. Eli felt the weight of responsibility settle on him, but it was a weight he accepted willingly. Crithar had tested him fully, and he had risen to meet every challenge. Leora turned to him, her eyes reflecting both admiration and curiosity. "You understand that this is more than a trial," she said. "It is a test of character, of partnership, and of the ability to rise above challenges that seem impossible. You have done more than survive, you have proven yourself worthy." Eli nodded. I understand. Krithar has taught me much. The challenges were difficult, but they were also lessons. I have learned patience, strategy, courage, and the importance of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. And I have learned that respect and trust are earned, not given. Jerk's eyes softened, a rare display of pride. It is true. You have learned well. You are human, yet your spirit, cleverness, and courage have risen above even the most difficult tests Krithar could present. You have earned my respect, and my daughter's. The crowd cheered again, and Eli felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The trials had tested his body, mind, and spirit, and he had emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable than ever before. He realized that the journey had changed him, not only as a warrior but as a leader and protector. He understood the responsibility that came with respect and trust, and he was ready to face it. Leora stepped closer, her expression calm but warm. The trial is complete, she said. You have proven yourself in every way that matters. Strength, intelligence, courage, and honor. You possess all of these. More importantly, you have shown that you can protect and inspire, that you can lead when the stakes are highest. That is what Krithar values most. Eli smiled, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey they had shared. Thank you, Leora. You have been a guide, a teacher, and a formidable partner. I could not have succeeded without your guidance and trust. Leora's eyes reflected the understanding and respect that had grown between them. And you have earned mine, she said simply. Few could have faced what you faced and emerged not only alive but worthy of trust. That is rare, and it is valuable. Commander Jerk stepped forward once more. Let it be known, he said to the crowd, that Eli has completed the trial of Krithar. He has proven himself worthy not by strength alone, but by courage, intelligence, honor, and the ability to protect and lead. He has earned the respect of Krithar, its people, and my daughter. Let him stand as an example of what humanity can achieve when the spirit is strong, the mind is sharp, and the heart is true. The plaza erupted in cheers and applause, and Eli felt a deep sense of accomplishment. The trial had been more than a test. It had been a journey of growth, understanding, and discovery. He had faced danger, learned from Leora, and demonstrated qualities that went beyond mere combat. He had proven that the human spirit could rise to meet any challenge, that intelligence, courage, and honor were the greatest strengths of all. Leora stood beside him, her expression calm but proud. The trial is complete, she said. But remember, Eli, what matters most is not the recognition, but what you do with it. Krithar is strong, but it will face future challenges. Your actions will shape its destiny, and your choices will continue to matter. Eli nodded. I understand. I will continue to act with courage, intelligence, and honor. Krithar has given me much, and I will do my best to protect and inspire. Jerk placed a hand on Eli's shoulder, a gesture of respect and acceptance. You have done more than survive. You have proven yourself worthy of Krithar, its people, and my daughter. That is a rare accomplishment. The human spirit, clever and resilient, has triumphed here today. Eli felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had come seeking a challenge, but he had found more than that. He had discovered the value of trust, the power of intelligence and courage, and the strength of respect earned through action. Krithar had tested him fully, and he had risen to meet every challenge. As the crowd dispersed, Leora walked beside Eli, her presence steady and reassuring. The trial is over, she said, but the journey continues. We have much to learn from each other and from the world around us. That is the true reward. Eli smiled, understanding fully what she meant. The trial had ended, but the lessons and growth would continue. He had earned respect, trust, and recognition, but more importantly, he had learned the true value of courage, intelligence, honor, and the human spirit. Krithar had tested him, and he had risen to meet every challenge. Together, Eli and Leora walked through the streets of the city, the citizens watching with admiration and hope. The journey had been long and difficult, but the outcome was clear. Strength alone does not define a hero. It is courage, intelligence, honor, and the ability to protect and inspire that truly matter. Eli had proven himself in every way that counted, and Krithar would never forget the human who had faced impossible odds and emerged worthy. As they reached the steps of the central platform, Eli turned to Leora. I understand now, he said. The trial was not just about fighting. It was about leadership, judgment, and trust. It was about being human at our best. Leora nodded. Exactly. And you have shown that humanity can rise above challenges with courage, intelligence, and honor. That is what Krithar values, and that is why you have earned respect. not just from me, but from everyone here. Eli felt a quiet pride, tempered by humility. He had faced the savage daughter, survived Crithar's challenges, led and protected, and proven himself worthy. The trial had been grueling, yet it had forged him into something greater, a warrior, a leader, and a human capable of rising to meet any challenge. Commander Jerk approached once more, standing beside Leora and Eli. "Let it be known," he said, "that Eli has completed the trial, proven his worth, and earned the trust and respect of Crithar, its people, and my daughter. He is a warrior of courage, intelligence, and honor. He is a human worthy of admiration." The plaza erupted in cheers again, louder than before. Eli felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Crithar had tested him, shaped him, and recognized him. The human spirit had triumphed, not through violence alone, but through courage, intelligence, honor, and heart. As the sun rose over Crithar, Eli and Leora stood together, looking out over the city and the land beyond. The trial was complete, but the journey of growth, respect, and partnership would continue. Crithar had taught him the greatest lesson of all, that humanity, clever, resilient, and courageous, could rise to meet any challenge, protect the innocent, and earn respect through action and integrity. And in that moment, Eli knew that Crithar's trial had not only tested him, it had revealed the strength of the human spirit, and the bond he had forged with Leora would guide them both into the future.